Welcome back, beautiful souls. Welcome back to my Becoming Supernatural read along. I'm your manifesting mentor, Brittany Starks. I'm not a coach, I'm not a guru, but I'm just someone who walks the walk and shares the truth of what I've learned through practice and embodiment. You've made it this far to part 4 of chapter 7, where Dr. Joe explores the concept of heart brain. This section reveals how the heart doesn't just respond to our thoughts, it actually sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. That's a complete shift from how we've been conditioned to live. So, when we begin to live heart centered, we're no longer driven by survival emotions. We become guided by coherence, intuition, and alignment. So, this part of the chapter gives us real insight into what it means to lead with elevated emotions instead of chasing them. So, if you've ever wondered what it looks like to fully integrate the wisdom of your heart into your everyday life, this section is going to open some doors for you. So, let's get started with the heart brain. Dr. Joe begins by saying that in 1991, the pioneering work of Dr. J. Andrew Amore showed that the heart literally has a mind of its own. With as many as 40,000 neurons, the heart has a nervous system that functions independently of the brain. The technical term coined for this system is the intrinsic cardiac nervous system, more commonly known as the heart brain. The discovery was so monumental that it led to a new field of science called neurocardiology. Did not know that. The heart and the brain are connected by the efferent descending and afferent ascending pathways. However, 90% of the connecting nerve fibers ascend from the heart up to the brain. Are more uncovered that these direct afferent neural pathways continuously send signals and information that interacts with and modifies activity in the brain's higher cognitive and emotional centers. These signals from the heart to the brain connect through the vagus nerve and continue straight to the thalamus, which synchronizes the cortical activity such as thinking, perceiving, and understanding language. Then to the frontal lobes, responsible for motor functions and problem solving, and onto the brain's survival center, the amygdala, which signals emotional memory. The core cells of the amygdala even synchronize to the heart's beating. See figure 7.2. This means that if your heart center is open, it's keeping your brain's survival centers in check. It's possible then that the more heart centered you are, the less likely you will react to stressors in your life. I can attest to this. The reverse is also true. The less energy you have in your heart center, the more likely you will be to living in survival mode. This tells us that our feelings and heart rhythm affect what emotional memories and responses transpire in us. So, stress and anxiety can trigger brainwave patterns to match an anxiety habit of the past. Conversely, just like a computer that matches patterns, elevated emotions of the heart can produce coherence in brainwave patterns. So, if you're summoning the feelings of your future by creating elevated states, your brain is beginning to lay the neural networks for those future emotions or that new destiny. Armour's discovery of the afferent neural pathways from the heart to the brain proves that the heart independently processes emotions, responds directly to the environment, and regulates its rhythm without receiving information from the brain. So, in other words, your heart is getting the signals on your emotions first and foremost, and it has nothing to necessarily do with your brain sending signals to the heart. That's because the heart and the ANS always work together. Also noteworthy is that the nerves facilitating this communication enable the heart to sense, remember, self regulate, and make decisions about cardiac control independent of the nervous system. To put it simply, emotions and feelings originating in the heart play an important role in the way we think, process information, feel, and understand the world and our place in it. Once the heart center is activated, it acts as an amplifier to jumpstart the brain, enhance its activity, and create balance order, and coherence throughout the body. So the heart is basically running the show. But we have to tune into it to make sure that we activate this space. Living heart centered, and this is what he's going to talk about. As I said earlier, every thought you think produces a corresponding chemistry equal to that thought, which in turns creates an emotion. Therefore, you are suggestible only to the thoughts equal to your emotional state. I always said this to people. If somebody's super emotional, angry, or frustrated, or whatever, they can only think thoughts that's equal to that anger, equal to that frustration, equal to whatever other emotion they're feeling. So you can only perceive and receive information according to the emotion you are feeling in the moment. That is nuts. Anyways, we now know that when our students are heart centered and feel more wholeness and oneness, they're less separate from their dreams. When they feel gratitude, abundance, freedom, or love, all of those emotions welcome corresponding thoughts. Those heart centered emotions open the door to the subconscious mind so that you can program your autonomic nervous system equal to the thoughts of your new future. We also know that if they live in the feeling of fear or lack, but try to think they're abundant, they can't produce a measurable effect because change can only happen when thoughts are in alignment with the emotional state of the body. I need to read that again. I need to read that again. We also know that if they live in the feeling of fear or lack, but try to think they're abundant, they can't produce a measurable effect because change can only happen when thoughts are in alignment with the emotional state of the body. This is why I always say regulate your nervous system, regulate your nervous system, regulate your nervous system. I don't care about robotic affirming. It's cute, and maybe some people have some success here and there. But if your nervous system is dysregulated, you can say, I am rich, I am rich, I am rich. But if your body is in survival mode, it's rejecting it. And this is why it feels so awkward, especially when you're manifesting relationships, anything that your body does not feel safe with because of past trauma. It's not going to be on board. So you got to learn how to regulate your nervous system. I love Dr. Joe's work for that. Anyways, back to what I was saying. They can think positively all they want, but without a corresponding feeling, or emotion equal to that thought, the message cannot be felt or understood throughout the rest of the body. So your body is not even going to process that information unless there's a corresponding feeling. So you can repeat the affirmation, I am fearless, until you're blue in the face. But if it's fear that you're actually feeling, the thought, I am fearless, never makes it past the brainstem, which means you're not signaling the body and the autonomic nervous system into a new specific destiny. The feeling is what produces the emotional charge, energy, to stimulate your autonomic nervous system into a different destiny. This is why Neville Goddard preached feeling is the secret. He didn't even know the science behind it. He just knew the ancient spiritual principles that Abdullah taught him. Feeling is the secret. Reverend Ike used to say, feeling gets the blessing. Dr. Joe is telling you the feeling is what produces the emotional charge, aka the energy, to stimulate your autonomic nervous system into a new destiny. So, yes, your feeling state, when you learn how to shift it, become a good steward of your body and your nervous system and learn how to shift your emotional state. Now you're in the driver's seat. Without the feeling, a disconnect remains between your brain and body, between the thought of the health and the feeling of the health. You can't embody that new state of being. It's only when you change your energy that you can produce more consistent effects. If you sustain these elevated emotions on a daily basis, eventually your body, in its innate intelligence, begins to make relative genetic changes in the way I described earlier. So people are changing their genetic, um, the way their bodies process and read genetics just by changing their emotional state. Because if you think about it, if you don't experience life in the same way emotionally, you're producing different chemicals, hopefully chemicals that the body does really good things with and can stay in homeostasis with. And this is what we're getting at. I'm so excited about this. He says that's because the body believes that the emotion you are embracing is coming from an experience in your environment. So when you open your heart center, practice the feeling of an emotion before the experience occurs and marry it with a clear intention, the body responds as if it's in the future experience. That heart mind coherence then influences your body's chemistry and energy in a series of ways. If coherence between the heart and brain can originate in the heart and their synchronization results in optimal performance and health, then you should be taking time every day to focus on activating your heart center. By intentionally choosing to feel the elevated emotions of the heart rather than waiting for something outside of yourself to elicit those emotions, you become who you are truly meant to be, a heart empowered individual. When you are living by the heart, you naturally choose love and innately demonstrate it through compassion and care for the well being of yourself, others, and the planet. Through our partnership with Heart Math Institute, our students have demonstrated with practice we can, in fact, produce regulated. I'm sorry, we can, our students have demonstrated with practice. I don't know how I got lost. I'm sorry. Through our partnership with Heart Math Institute, our students have demonstrated that with practice, we can in fact produce, regulate, and sustain elevated feelings and emotions, independent of events in our external world. In our workshop around the world, through the practice of regulating the heart rhythms to sustain elevated emotions, we teach our students how to generate heart and brain coherence. We then measure their abilities using HRV monitors. During guided meditations, we ask our students to surrender to the feelings of gratitude, joy, and love, and we encourage daily practice outside of our formal instruction because when one chooses to practice sitting in a state of coherence, it becomes a habit. I hope that with enough practice, our students can replace old mental scripts of feeling unworthy, fearful, or insecure with more elevated states of being and fall deeply in love with their lives. We've seen enough of them demonstrate that this is indeed possible to produce positive, measurable, tangible effects in their lives simply by shifting the paradigm of their thoughts and feelings. These dedicated individuals return to their homes with their positive effects they produced in their own lives, ripple out to positively affect their families and communities, continuously expanding their vibrational influence of harmony and coherence throughout the world. And this is why I keep reiterating that as you do this work in your own life for yourself, it's actually benefiting the entire planet because your energy being lifted raises the frequency of the people that you are connected to, the people you have relationships with, you work with, you commune with, you fellowship with. Your existence in a higher frequency raises the frequency of everything you're connected to. So, yeah, it has domino effects. It's amazing. By repeatedly practicing the regulation of heightened emotional states, in time, the constant feeling of elevated emotions creates a new emotional baseline. This baseline then begins to continuously influence a new set of thoughts equal to the heightened feelings. The summation of those novel thoughts creates a new level of mind, which then produces more corresponding emotions equal to those thoughts, further sustaining that baseline. When this feedback loop between the heart, body, and mind, brain, occurs, you are in an entirely new state of being, and the consciousness of the unlimited mind and the energy of profound love and gratitude. The repetition of this process is what it means to recondition your body, rewire your brain, and reconfigure your biology equal to your new state of being. Now you are naturally, automatically, and regularly broadcasting a different electromagnetic signature of energy into the field. This is who you are or who you have become. Countless history books could be written throughout the lens of incoherence. I'm sorry, countless history books could be written through the lens of incoherent emotions. I think that's a bar because we don't realize a lot of people were dysregulated when they wrote stuff. Anyways, whether the result is a Shakespearean tragedy, genocide, or a world war, survival emotions such as blame, hate, rage, competition, and retribution have resulted in an endless, unnecessary trail of pain, suffering, oppression, and death. The results have caused humans to live in opposition and conflict rather than in peace and harmony. This is the time in history where we can break that cycle. This is a pivotal moment in the story of humanity where ancient wisdom and modern science are intersecting to provide us with the technology and scientific understanding to learn not only how to more efficiently and effectively manage our emotions, but also what that means for our health, relationships, energy level, and personal and collective evolution. It doesn't require moving mountains, only changing our internal state of being. But you know what? Sometimes it feels like moving a mountain. Just saying. This allows us to alter the way we act with one another, replacing stressful situations with positive experiences that give us energy, fill our spirit, and leave us with a sense of wholeness, connection, and unity. The brain may think, but when you turn to your heart, the brain may think, but when you turn your heart into an instrument of perception, it knows. And let me see. I think that is the part where I just want to make sure that that's where it ends. Yep, that's where it ends. So, this was such a beautiful reminder for me that the heart isn't just a metaphor for love. It's a literal intelligent system that allows us to live in a more connected, magnetic, and elevated state. And the more we learn to tune into our heart center, the more we shift our baseline from reactivity to peace, from lack to wholeness. When we practice living heart centered, we're not just manifesting, we're aligning with a new version of ourselves who already has it. Let's move on to the final section of chapter 7, which is part 5. I'll see you in the next video.